Welcome to this Monday, July 16th meeting of the Albion City Council. If you have a cell phone, I ask that you place it on silent. I call this meeting to order, and we will begin with a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Domingo, if you would, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Reed. Here. Brown.
Here.
Lawler.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
French.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. We'll move on to presentations. We have 5 presentations this evening. The first is our audit presentations from Stevens. You have to pronounce the... Yes. And Tucker.
Well, thank you and good evening. Bill Tucker from Stevens, Pervick & Tucker, here tonight to present to you the audited financial statements for December 31st, 2017. I'd like to first start by just going through the information that was handed out to you in your packets, then the one additional piece of information I handed out to you tonight as well. We'll start with the information that was handed out to you in your packets. So everybody received a large bound report for the audited financial statements for December 31st, 2017. Within this bound report, you'll find all the necessary financial statements and note disclosures to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Also within there, you'll find the independent auditor's report, which provides our opinion on those financial statements. So all that is within this larger document for you. I also put together an audit presentation outline for you, and I handed that out to you tonight. So this is the document that I'd like to go page by page through with you. So a couple pages here that I'd like to kind of do my presentation with that one document. I'd like to take a second also and thank Tom Mead, and the rest of the staff for their courtesy and cooperation throughout the audit process. We really do appreciate everybody's hard work throughout that process. It does take a lot to be ready for an audit and go through an audit each year. So thank you very much to Tom for that assistance. All right, the first page that I'm going to turn to in the audit presentation outline is page Roman numeral number 1 of the financial statements. The heading at the top of that page is the independent auditor's report. The purpose of an audit is to provide an opinion as to the fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It's not to detect fraud, and it's not to give you an opinion on your internal controls. Within the independent auditor's report, we're providing our opinion on your financial statements. We're actually giving you our opinion on the 9 opinion units of the city. Those 9 opinion units are described in the first paragraph, and they are the governmental activities, the business type activities, the discretely presented component units, each major fund, in which there's 5 major funds in the current year, the general fund, the Albion Trust Fund, the major street fund, the sewer fund, and the water fund, and then the last opinion unit is the aggregate remaining fund information. Our opinion on each of those 9 opinion units is at the top of the second page in the paragraph that's labeled opinions, which it states, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. That's what we consider to be an unmodified or clean opinion, and that's the best opinion you can receive on your financial statements. All right. From there, we'll turn past the very next page, and we'll turn to page number 1 of the financial statements. The heading at the top of that page is the statement of net position. The statement of net position is a snapshot of your assets, deferred outflows of resources, liabilities, deferred inflows of resources, and net position at December 31st, 2017. I've highlighted a couple numbers on this page for you. This is presented on the full accrual basis of accounting. So it's similar to what you might see for a business or a nonprofit organization. So you'd see your capital assets on the statement of net position, your long-term debt. Also, you see your net pension asset and your net pension liability. And those are the 2 numbers that I highlighted for you on this page. The reason I highlighted these for you is because they were new to the statement about three years ago. something that we've continually discussed with council, and just kind of where you're funded at with your pension, and then starting next year, your other post-employment benefits liability as well. But just because they are such large numbers to communities, and really wanted to focus on those with you. So you have two separate pension plans. One is your pension plan that you have with MERS, and this is for your primary government, and your housing commission is also included with the MERS plan. And then you also have a plan that is a city pension plan, a single employer pension plan. That's for your public safety officers. So we have those two separate plans, and we have those kind of separate here with your net pension assets of $9 million. That's with your public safety employees pension plan. And then the net pension liability towards the bottom of the page. In total, it's about $800,000 or $775,000 between the primary government and the component unit section there. So those two pensions, I have identified a little bit more detail on the very next 2 pages for you on each of those, just to give you an idea where those are funded at. So your primary government and housing commission MERS plan is a total liability about $825,000, as I just mentioned, and that's about 94% funded. Overall, that's a really good funding percentage for a lot of communities. We're seeing averages about 65 to 70% being funded at for local municipalities. So you guys are well above the threshold or where you see other communities at. Obviously, that has changed over the course of the last 3 years. You were overfunded just 3 years ago, but changes in investments and assumption changes have changed for that MERS plan. Now, your other pension plan on the very next page for your public safety officers retirement system, this actually has an asset associated with it, a $9 million asset. This is funded at 167%, so obviously well above the normal threshold there. That pension plan, I know for you guys have had a lot of years where your contributions have been really small or none at all over the course of the years, but that has continued to grow with great investments within the plan. So I think that plan overall, like I said, has done really well and continues to be well above the funded ratio. All right. From there, let's turn to the very next page, page number 3 of the financial statements. Page number 3 is your governmental funds balance sheet. Now, this is probably more common, more what you're used to seeing within the financial statements presented to the city. This is you're adopting your budget for your general fund or your major street fund or your local street fund. So this is at that level of the fund level presentation. The governmental funds balance sheet is a snapshot of your assets, liabilities, deferred inflows of resources, and fund balance at December 31st, 2017. On this page, or in the funds, we'd like to focus on the general fund, the far left column, as it is the main operating fund of the city. At December 31st, 2017, you had total fund balance within your general fund of $1,436,786. with portions that are considered to be non-spendable. So that's really made up of prepaid expenses, the money that's already gone out the door. Leaving you with an unassigned and assigned fund balance, those two numbers add together of $1,211,462 that is available for expenditures in future periods. This dollar amount represents approximately 30% of your annual operating expenses. Our recommendation, what we'd like to see in that, a minimum recommendation of what we'd like to see in that annual or percentage is 15 to 20% of your annual operating expenses as a minimum. So you guys are just above that minimum. And really held a pretty good percentage over the last 5-10 years. Last year, if we looked at your percentage, you're about 37%, so that did dip a little bit from last year to 2017. All right, moving from there to the next page, page number 5 of the financial statements. Page number 5 of the financial statements is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for the year ended December 31st, 2017. That's where we get into the detail of what happened during the year, the money coming in and the money going out. Again, focusing on your general fund, the far left column, you had total revenues in the general fund of $3,952,523. That was an increase of approximately $140,000 or 3.7% compared to 2016. The main area that we saw fluctuation within your revenues was your intergovernmental revenues. Your intergovernmental revenues were up about $325,000 compared to the previous year. Two main areas there. First, you received a DNR grant for the bike path trail extension, so a large dollar amount there. And also you received an $80,000 grant for the Holland Park renovation project as well. So a couple big revenue sources that came in 2017. Moving down the page to your total expenditures, you had total expenditures of $4,003,167. That was an increase of approximately $551,000 or 16% compared to 2016. Two main areas that we saw fluctuations within your expenditures. First, your public safety expenses were up about $200,000 compared to the previous year. One of the main areas that we saw fluctuation there was in the overtime expenses were up within public safety. It sounded like, as we talked to Tom about that more PTO was being used as people, had more experience and grew their bank. Therefore, the other officers had to pick up and work a little bit of overtime to compensate for that PTO being used. The other area that we saw a significant fluctuation was your recreation and cultural expenses. Those were up about $294,000. A lot of that related to repairs of the restrooms, other facilities, bike path trail, improvements at the park, and a lot of that grant money that came in, was being expended out within that fund in 2017. Results for the year, third number up from the bottom, a decrease in your overall fund balance in the dollar amount of $61,116. A couple last pages for you. A couple graphs and charts just give you a visual perspective of some of those same numbers and give you a little bit of trends over the course of the years as well. So the first chart that we have for you is a 5-year analysis of your general fund revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. As you can see from this, the blue is your revenues, the purple is your expenditures, and then the trend line there is your fund balance. Your revenues have exceeded your expenditures in 3 out of the last 5 years, so 2013, 15, and 16. And like I said, overall pretty steady on that fund balance line over the course of those 5 years. The next two charts, this is the composition of your general fund revenues and expenditures. The first one is your general fund revenues. Just give me an idea where those sources of revenue are coming in from. So in 2017, the largest source of revenue, those boxes are pretty small for the key, but intergovernmental revenues, state revenue sources, a little bit of federal money coming in, local sources made up 36% of your total revenues in 2017. The second largest piece of the pie there is your property tax revenues at 29% of your total revenues in 2017. Bottom of the page, general fund expenditure detail. The largest component of your expenditures was on public safety at 53% of your total expenditures out of the general fund. All right. The last page that I have for you, this is just our report on internal control or financial reporting. Really the highlight area that I wanted to identify to you was as we went through our procedures for the audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be a material weakness. So overall, a really good, clean audit. Great job by Tom in 2017.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from council? Okay. I believe this happened last year as well, that there weren't any concerns listed, so I think that's a good thing. I know early on, I've been on council for
nearly 7.5 years. And
Right.
I know that there were years where we had some issues about some partitioning between roles and those kinds of things. So it's good to hear that we don't have any of those issues. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any questions from council? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to item B under presentations, the big read, Jess Roberts.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jess Roberts, and I am the director of Albion's Big Read, as well as a resident of Albion. And I have the happy opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Big Read this evening and about what is in store for us in the coming months. So the Big Read, I think as many people know, is a program that aims to get people, young people in particular, excited about reading, that aims to teach them how to lead and give them practical opportunities to do so, and that aims to bring different groups of people together through shared experiences of reading and the arts. But the more I've been thinking about the Big Read, the more I'm convinced that what the Big Read is it's a giant celebration. It's a celebration of Albion. It's a celebration of our young people. It's a celebration of the power of reading and the arts. And I think it's actually, at its heart, a celebration of collaboration. And it's a celebration that's made possible by the people in this room, by the people in front of me in this room representing the city of Albion, one of our most important partners. It's made possible by the people behind me in this room, and the many, many people who we all represent and who we care about. And so the Big Read is a thing that for many people in Albion happens for the most part in October. It's the month of our programming. It's a month when we have book discussions, when speakers come, when we have festivals, when there are concerts and movies. But the Big Read is also a thing that is actually in the works all summer long. So I wanted tonight to invite you to the Big Read, everyone by way of the camera, to invite you to the Big Read in October, but also to suggest ways that you can see the Big Read at work in Albion right now. So I have 3 objects that I just wanted to share with you or suggest that you keep an eye out for that are evidence of the Big Read at work in our community. So the first one is this book. So this book is Albion's Big Read book this year. It's called X, a Novel, and it is written by Ilyasa Shabazz, who is Malcolm X's daughter, and Kekla Magoon, who is an NAACP Image Award winner and a Coretta Scott King Honor author. This is a book that is about it's about the childhood and young adulthood of Malcolm X and about a young man trying to figure out how to make it work in an unjust world. It is about Malcolm Little becoming Red, becoming Detroit Red, becoming ultimately Malcolm X. So this is a book that is available, will be available to every single person in this room and others, and that will be available in our various book hubs all over the city, at the district library, at the Charles Snyder Center, at the English department at Albion College, and I hope at City Hall, where residents of Albion can come and pick up their copy of X, a Novel. So please be on the lookout for this novel. It is the heart of the Big Read this year. The other thing you can keep an eye out for is this image. So this is our logo this year. So be looking for Malcolm, who is out there, and you will see him, we hope, over and over again in materials that are advertising the increasing number of events that are made possible through our many, many partners. So I brought several, though perhaps not enough, copies of this particular form, which asks you to save the date. On the 29th of September, we'll have our kickoff event in Holland Park. Thank you, Len Reed, for all of the amazing work that you've done there. On the 2nd of October, this is really exciting, Ilyasa Shabazz, Malcolm X's daughter, will be in Albion speaking to us at the Bohm Theater. So when you get your book, bring your book to the Bohm Theater on the 2nd of October, where after she has talked to us, she will also sign copies of her book. On the 5th and 6th, there'll be Walk the Beat Albion, a series of outdoor concerts. And then on the 1st of November, Kekla Magoon, who is the other co-author of this book, will be with us for the final Albion's Big Read celebration. And at that celebration, we will celebrate the young people who are really the center, the spirit, the soul of the Big Read as a project. And so I wanted to suggest another object to keep an eye out for that is evidence of the Big Read at work, and that is a van. So every Wednesday morning, in the last 2 weeks of June and all 4 weeks of July, as well as every day of the second week in August, there's an Albion College van that drives through every single one of the precincts in the town of Albion, because we have kids who are participating in our Big Read Leadership Program from every single one of the 6 precincts in Albion. And that van is an Albion College van that will cruise around between 9:30 and 10:30 in the morning, and noon and 1 in the afternoon, picking up students who come to Albion College, who read this book together, who talk about it together, who play and laugh and ask questions and find answers together and prepare to lead the discussions that will anchor the month of programming in October. So know that the students in that van are on their way to a place where the following amazing 25 young people come every Wednesday by 10:30 in the morning, which I'm told is quite early. And I suspect that there is a person on this list that every single person in this room knows or loves, or knows a person who knows or loves. So I want to say these names aloud. I find them incredibly moving and inspirational. Some of them are here. But here they are. These are the 2018 Big Read leaders. Ataya Artis, Talia Austin, Aja Barbour, Pajane Chapman, Emmylou Christensen, India Crumsby, Xavier Dean, Malia Frost, Jemiah Funderburg, De'Ara Gamble, Ivan Green, Olivia Hudson, Zariah Kemp, Ella Lattimore, Tyland Martin, Aja Metz, Marshall Nicholson, Aaliyah Roberts, Grace Sabaski, Fred Stewart, Jacoby Stewart, Tajiana Stewart, Bibi Stovall, Lauren Van Vliet, and Naya Williams. So when you see that van, honk at that van, bless that van, wave at that van, because those kids are on their way to a place where a group of young people are making us all proud every week and will give us an opportunity as a community to feel their success in October. So please plan to come and be with us in October. Please keep those kids in your hearts up until then and even afterwards. And thank you so much. And please be sure to pick up copies of these, save the dates, and join us for the events.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item C under presentations, Albion College Oakland Clinic Project, Dr. Ditzler and Dr. Williams.
Hi, I'm Maury Ditzler. I live at 501 East Michigan Avenue. I'm the president of Albion College, and this is not Dr. Williams.
I sure don't look like Ginger for all of those who know Ginger. But I'd like to introduce myself to the members of the Albion City Council, as well as the greater Albion community. My name is Greg Beeg, and as of 12 hours ago, I was named the interim CEO at Oaklawn Hospital. So, that's it. Go ahead, Dr. Ditzler.
On Friday afternoon, I gave a presentation right after 4 Albion students spoke, and that was hard, but the only thing harder than following 4 Albion students is following an Albion faculty member. But we'll do the best we can. We'd like to talk to you about a project that we're working on. We really worked on it for the better part of 2, almost 3 years. And you'll see the project coming together. It's in the old Parker Inn, what we call Munger Place at Albion College, up here on Michigan Avenue, just west of the high school. That's the old hotel with the big white columns on that. In the basement of that building, which years ago was a restaurant, we're building a clinic. We're building an extended hours clinic. One of our concerns at Albion College was that while there's good health care in town and good health care on campus, there was not extended hours health care on campus. You couldn't get health care in town or on our campus in the evening. You couldn't get it on the weekends. And so we sent a request to 3 different hospitals, 3 different healthcare units, and asked if they would work with us to establish after-hours healthcare in town. And we had good response from Oakland. We began working on that project. And what's now coming together is a facility that will be on the Albion College campus in Munger Place. It will be open to everyone in town as well as our students. The reason there wasn't extended health care in town is there wasn't enough population, there wasn't enough demand to make it financially viable to have health care in evenings and weekends. We saw the same thing with our clinic on campus. We had a good clinic, but we only had doctors there 5 hours a week, and we were only open about 40 hours a week. And so what we did is we combined our populations, right? The population that would normally seek health care in town from professionals plus our students combined together is enough to make it financially viable to have health care in town. And I believe the hours are going to be to 9 o'clock during the week and on Saturdays as well.
That's correct. It'll be from 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, until 9 o'clock in the evening. Saturday from 11 o'clock until 9 o'clock in the evening. And then Sunday will be closed, but we're looking, depending on the volumes, we will look to open up on Sunday also.
And you know, we've been working on this for a couple years, and we thought we had everything worked out. And then we ran into a roadblock, and that was even though financially it would work, we could cash flow the clinic, it was going to be too expensive to renovate a site on the Albion College campus, right? And it only works if it's on the Albion College campus. Our students have to be able to walk to it as well. And then we like the idea that's close to the center of Albion as well. But there was no site set up to have a clinic on campus, and it was going to be too expensive to renovate space in Washington Gardner High School or in the old Munger place. And our state senator, Senator Knopf, introduced legislation, introduced action that got almost $1 million in the state budget, and then we had good support from Representative Bison to get that supported. And so there is a grant, there's a gift from the state that's made that renovation possible. Can you tell us the status of that renovation? How's it coming on? When are we going to get done?
I'll tell you what, I will turn that over to Kathy Rhodes. She's actually the director. Things are proceeding well, and
Can you come to the mic, just because people are viewing, so it helps if you face.
I'm a loud talker too. So the demolition of the old stuff has already been accomplished. We already have all the blueprints and the drawings, and we've settled on what it's going to look like. And we're on task to open the new clinic, which means that we'll be moving our existing clinic out on B Drive. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. To the center of the town, January. Okay. So we're looking forward to January 2019.
Okay.
And while it's not on our campus, it is clearly a public clinic. It's open to everyone in town, outside the town. We hope you come and use it so that we can be open for even more hours. Obviously, Albion College is excited about this because we like to have comprehensive health care for our students. We had good health care, but we didn't have enough hours, and we didn't have all the services that we wanted. We also think it's great for the community. When we hire employees, we want them to live in town. Yes. To live in town, you want housing, you want education, you want a job for your spouse, you want entertainment, and you want health care, right? This takes care of one of those benefits from it. So we're looking forward to this happening, looking forward to a January opening.
Okay, thank you. 1 second. Are there any questions from council? Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a question, but I do want to thank you for the collaboration that different entities have come together. It was obviously a want to see within the council, with Councilmember Spicer voicing her opinion about it very strongly. So I do thank you for collaborating all together. And one thing I have learned is that partnerships are very important. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now proceed to item D under presentations, introduction of Lindsay Collins, the new code enforcement officer. Director Tracy.
John Tracy, Director of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. I'd like to introduce to Council, the Mayor, and citizens of Albion, Lindsay Collins, who is our new Code Enforcement Officer, and you will see her out around the city and all parts of the city here very shortly. And she's a very welcome addition to my office.
Hi, everyone.
Are there any comments from council? I'll have one. I'm glad that we're able to add additional staff to address that. I know residents have been very concerned about the condition of their neighborhoods, and so I think this having a full-time person handling that it's going to be a good thing for the community. Are there any comments from council? Further, Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have really a comment. I'd just like to ask Lindsay if she would like to tell us a little bit about herself.
I have been a part of Albion for 32 years. Always lived here. I have a 13-year-old son, bachelor's degree in human service management. Look forward to working with everyone. I'm excited. Started getting out on the town recently and kind of seeing what there is to look at and start, issuing some citations. Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. We'll move on now to item E, National Night Out, and Interim Manager Kip will, you want to handle that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Officer Napi was feeling a little under the weather tonight. Either that or she just wanted to leave it for me to do the speaking. But this year, Albion Public Safety will be doing National Night Out. National Night Out is an annual community building campaign that promotes police-community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie to make our neighborhoods safer and more caring places to live. National Night Out embraces the relationship between neighbors and law enforcement while bringing back the true sense of community. Furthermore, it provides a great opportunity to bring police and neighbors together under positive circumstances. This is the 35th anniversary of National Night Out, and but the first time that I'm aware that Albion's actually participating in it. I asked several of our officers to come together and see what we could do to put on a program, and Officer Napi stepped forward and has been doing a tremendous job. She's not only gotten funding for us to be able to do this through donations, and I have to thank Team One Plastics as our major donor at this time, even though we've got donations from several other entities in town. National Night Out is always the first Tuesday in the month of August, so it'll be Tuesday, August 7th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Residents are being asked to lock their doors, turn on their porch lights, and spend an evening with neighbors, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, at Victory Park in the city of Albion. During this year's event, we are planning several fun events for children and adults, including face painting, a dunk tank, which I'm told I will be in, along with several other officers, hopefully. And kids are going to have an opportunity to paint hand paint one of our patrol cars. I'm assured that it will wash off. So we'll see. There'll be emergency vehicles, including police cars, fire trucks, ambulance to tour. There'll be free food, music, snow cones, and everybody will have a chance to meet their local police officers, firefighters, and paramedics. So we encourage the entire community to come out to Victory Park on Tuesday, August 7th from 6 to 8 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no public hearings this evening. We'll move on to public comments. Persons addressing the City Council, you're asked to limit your comments to agenda items only, to observe and to no more than 3 minutes, and we ask you to observe proper decorum, and then also, according to council rules, no applause or anything like that. So are there any comments this evening on agenda item only? And please state your name and address.
I'm John Geyer. I live at 904 Irwin Avenue. I'm here to discuss some comments about the city's rental registration and certification proposal. Such programs typically do not work well due to the narrow scope of trying to fix all of the problems that relate to rental housing with one magic bullet. Such efforts have been used by Lansing and Battle Creek with limited success. By interviewing staff over the course of several years, we learned that they had to focus on known rental properties instead of seeking those operating under the radar. Both cities have much bigger budgets and have had problems getting the results for which they were created. In Battle Creek, for instance, we were told unofficially that they were so strapped for available inspectors that they had at the time accepted Section 8 inspections in lieu of the city's code. I don't think Albion will fare much better with fewer resources. The community is judged by its goal setting. If the goal is to improve housing stock, then promote it with incentives and apply the 2015 IPMC to all housing in the city limits. Singling out rental properties will only reduce the number of available low to moderate income housing. The inspection process is to provide for basic health and safety. That statement does not reflect the additional requirements many landlords have had to contend with when an inspector gets carried away with his or her likes, dislikes, and preferences. One inspector in Jackson openly stated, "I hate landlords. How would you like to invest in a business where you had to deal with that?" The frequency of inspections will either be an incentive or drive investors out of the rental business. That's my comments.
Okay. Thank you so much. Is there any further public comment on the agenda this evening?
Terry Adkins, 2007227 Mile Road. What I would like to do is ask the council to table this or put it off until after the election for the new council to see what the new council is comprised of. And in the meantime, ask the council members to meet with the Landlords Association to give us a chance to discuss more than can be done in 3 minutes. Also, we'd like to have a clear look at the cost, because right now everything's pretty ambiguous. It's the way that John stated it. It would cost me the second year approximately $1,000 before the first repair is made. Just that's $1,000 that could be spent on repairs, paint. That you can buy a lot of paint, that kind of stuff, for $1,000. And also, is there an appeals process? And somebody let us know. Meet with the association and let us know what the appeals process is, and will anything be grandfathered in to most of the housing stock in Albion is built before 55, 60. Will anything be grandfathered in up until the point that it's remodeled? You know, there's a lot of questions that we have that we don't know what the thing and how much it's going to cost, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to consent calendar, approval of various minutes, recent meetings. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed? We have approved all the items under consent calendar. Items for individual discussion. Item A, request approval of the first reading of ordinance number 2018-06, an ordinance to amend various ordinances or sections of the ordinances relative to medical marijuana facility license applications. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion do you want to provide?
Sure.
Attorney Harkness.
So, as the council's aware, we've been taking, well, you may not be aware, we've been taking a lot of applications for various facilities. Where we're running into problems are, there are some differences between what a lot of municipalities are doing in terms of their ordinances, including our own, and what some of these state administrative rules are for licensing and regulatory affairs relative to these facilities. So what this ordinance does is there are two primary areas. One is in terms of the various facilities verifying their capitalization. I've modified, this is under, just so you can see what I'm looking at, under section 22-204, subparagraph 22, our income verification amounts now mirror those required by the state. Some of the amounts are lower, some of them are higher, most of them are actually higher, but I've also added in the provisions that not less than 25% has to be in liquid assets that are verifiable through cash, CDs, 401ks, things like that, and to a limited extent, marijuana inventory. I thought it was important to put that in because we actually had one facility apply that was trying to use like $1 million worth of marijuana inventory, and that's not what was intended with the act. The other thing is, as it relates to proof of insurance on the facilities, we continue to have a provision that the city has to be listed as an additional insured. However, I've modified it so that we mirror the state law in that proof of insurance can be provided within 60 days of obtaining the state license. The license that we give them pending their state license is provisional, so in the off chance that they didn't provide that, we just wouldn't give them the full license without that proof, and we would revoke the provisional license. The only other very small change that I made was, just bear with me here. Number 25 under that same section, all documents submitted in support of the application have to be legible. Believe it or not, some of these companies have been submitting documents that are so poor we can't even read what's on them. And I can't believe I actually have to put this in an ordinance, but it apparently is necessary because we had one page in one of them that was illegible, and when we asked them to resubmit it, they just sent us the same page. The other thing, just so council's aware, because we have, I think, like 6 or 7 of these pending, I'm asking the council to determine this to be an emergency ordinance and then it goes into effect immediately with one reading.
Councilmember French.
Thank you, Colin. Do we anticipate licensing and
Go ahead.
do we anticipate licensing and regulatory affairs to make further changes between now and the close of the year, or do they feel like they're just? I mean, we've seen this happen a couple of times, right? So.
I guess your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
I can say with a fair degree of certainty, depending upon what happens with the ballot initiative for legalization, that could completely change how this whole system's going to operate.
Okay.
But we can only deal with what we've got in front of us right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any further questions from council? I believe we need 2/3.
Yeah, so it has to be a 5 vote, but these just mirror the state requirements.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Reed? Brown?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Spicer?
Yes.
French?
Yes.
And Mayor Brown?
Yes, we've approved the first reading of this ordinance to make the various changes that were indicated by the city attorney. Okay. Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. In light of the fact that we didn't get the amended council rules and procedures until after the deadline for submitting for packets, I would move that we table this into our next meeting, which I believe is August, or are we having one on the 23rd or 30th? I can't.
No, it's going to be August 6th. August 6th.
August 6th.
Support.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. Is there any discussion Councilman French.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that Councilman Brown and Mayor Brown, if you could have a look at that draft, let's not necessarily have a meeting, but if we can communicate by email or by having a conference call or something, that would make it easier for us to sort of get. I think there was just that one section in Rule 10 that I had highlighted in red, but I'm not sure if Attorney Scott Smith had a chance to sort of look at that. He also made some significant formatting changes as well as some other additions and deletions. So just have a look, and if you're okay with it, I have some questions. If we can just have a quick conversation, we can do this pretty quickly.
I think a conference call is what he suggested. So, seeing no further discussion, we'll just we'll do a roll call vote for that because we're taking it off the agenda.
Okay. Councilmember Reed?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Spicer?
Yes.
French?
Yes.
Barnes?
Yes.
And Mayor Brown.
Yes. Item C, discussion of parking, and we approve postponing that into a later date. Item C, a discussion of parking on Maple Street. I believe Councilmember Lawler introduced this.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, that I usually do a lot of door-to-door for various reasons in my precinct. And it has become very successful as to what the residents would like to see in their neighborhoods. And so I happened to talk with a lady that was concerned about one end of Maple Street having parking only on one side, and the end of Maple Street that she lives on has parking on both sides. So she would like to know if council could do something about the parking to make it the same as the other side of Maple Street. So that's my request.
Interim Manager Kip.
What's the concern? They want parking on both sides of what you're saying?
She wants to know if you can have parking only on one side like it is on the other end.
Okay, because in looking at that, my guess on this, as being the traffic engineer for the city, is that the reason there's no parking on the one side on the north end, which is from North Street to the north, was a result of when the school was there and the school buses passing through there. It would be very difficult in the width of that street to be able to pass cars. And then that was down to North Street. My guess is because the buses usually went different directions from that point, maybe one went that way, it wasn't as big a deal at the time, and so they left it. The majority of our streets do only have parking on one side and no parking on the other because of the width of the street. And as a traffic engineer, it would be my recommendation as well to only have one-sided parking on that area between Maple and Division Street, or I mean between North and Division Street on Maple. So,
I mean, so.
Well, I'd have to go back and research this a little more and get with the city attorney on this as well, because I'm not sure we actually have to do a traffic study on that, or we can make those decisions without a traffic study. So my suggestion would be, let me look into the legal issues of that, and I can bring it back to council probably at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it would also be prudent if we were to survey the rest of the people on that street, so that we're making a policy change that is the feeling of those residents.
Yep. And I think that's part of the survey that we need to do in doing that. So
I have no problem.
Councilmember Lawler. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so we'll just look forward to an update, hopefully in the next agenda, regarding what's necessary to make that determination. Item D, update on closure of Michigan Street between Dalrymple and Albion Streets. Councilmember Reed.
That at the last meeting, because Holland Park has two sections to it. It has the other section that starts at Cass Street and goes down to Michigan, and then on the other side of Michigan is where the bottom basketball courts are and the walk around the river. Well, in working down there in the park, I'm seeing, and the same was last year, and it has been, cars come in off Albion Street to go down Michigan Street, and they just swing around there and keep going. And with this summer, with kids playing in the park and and the different things going on, like the Big Read and family reunions and things, I had asked that there be a closure last year that we did for a while, something put at the corner of Michigan Street and at the corner of Albion Street that would block off that area of the street between the two ends of the park so that no child would get hurt. It's, you know, it's just, it's dangerous because children, when they're playing, they're just running, they're not paying attention to what's happening. And I can just see someone having an accident there and injuring a child. So I have asked that that be closed off until the end of September, at least, when the kids go back to school, then open it back up. But I had asked last year, and we had put in the park plan to have it closed from the time school was out to the time school went back, because that's when the park is being used.
If I, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So at the last meeting, I thought there was an ask for some pricing things. Were you gonna do? Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Based on what I've been able to research so far, is we would need 4 gates to put up there, and the gates will run roughly $500 a gate. So approximately $200 or $2,000 for the gates themselves, and then the installation, obviously. My hope would be that our own city workers could install them, but I can't guarantee that part of it until I get a little more information on that. But the highest expense I would expect to be maybe $2,500. So.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is, that quote was for the temporary?
Would be to actually install the gates like we have down at the park that would close and open, yeah.
But so would that be would we be looking at doing that as a permanent thing or till September, as suggested by Councilman Reed?
They could be used at any time because they'd be permanently mounted there and be able to be closed or open at any time, so.
Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious about what we could do with putting a temporary barrier there, something that could be, well, I guess I should say a mobile barrier, something that could be taken away at the end of summer or when kids return to school and then put back. Would there be any costs associated with that?
Probably not. We have temporary cement barriers that we could put in place, I believe. I'd have to check with Jim to be positive that we have them, but they're not that costly if we were to get them. And the only thing with those is once they're in place, it's not something we can move on a daily basis. There was discussion initially about these gates being open in the evenings and only being closed at certain times and so forth, or maybe only on the weekends. So that was the reason we talked about temporary gates.
So the temporary would be, the expense would not be there, but
right.
the flexibility is not there.
Right.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. I was just going to say that with the temporary barrier, that's something that we could do tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And with the gate we were talking about, probably not before the summer's over.
Possibly.
I can support something temporary at this point. Thank you.
Is there any further? Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. I would support both, actually. I think we can put up a temporary gate while we investigate the purchase and installation of a more permanent solution, so that we can provide for children's safety in the parks between now and whenever that installation would happen.
And my recommendation actually would be to do the temporary now, see how it works for us, if it's what we want to do, and then we can look at spending this money early next year and getting it installed before summer comes, if we want to do the permanent decision on that. So,
Councilmember Barnes.
What has been the pulse or the poll of the residents in that area?
Well,
Councilmember
they
Reed.
started out being completely against it, but then that kind of changed because last year in talking with some of them that I had talked with before, they saw the need for it. So, I mean, you've got the 3-on-3 basketball games going on down at the bottom of the park. It's just not safe for children.
Councilmember Barnes.
I have attended those very meetings where I saw Councilwoman Reed in attendance, and some of them were adamant that they did not want this. I would ask that we go back and at least check the houses on Washington, the one on Center Street, and Dalrymple, and Washington. Just 2 or 3 houses. Let's try to get a little feel before we move forward, because one of the residents that was added to her and her sister, I think, has moved on to a different state, and I haven't heard anything about it. Just want to, let's move in this amicably. I do support it, and at that meeting, Mrs. Reed said, Maurice, thank you for your support. I do support it, but I just want us to make sure we do it with them involved.
I think what they didn't
Councilman
support
Reed. Go ahead.
was the complete closure. Because at one time, I had asked that it be completely closed off. But then we didn't do that. We put a temporary on each side. And then when that was moved, I've been to 5 meetings.
I have one question. Do we have any data about the number of incidents on that street? Have we had any?
I don't know that we've had any.
Kind of dealing with vehicles? Okay. Okay. Okay, so the next step would be just to get a quote, or you've already got a quote, so I mean.
Yeah. My recommendation would be to do a temporary at this point of the year, because like I said, by the time we get this installed, we're gonna be close to the end of the summer. So if we do the temporary barricades for this year, we can see how it works. If we like how it works, if it works out well, then we can look to doing the more permanent thing for next year. Okay,
Councilmember Burns.
I haven't heard anyone say we might or might not address some of these residents. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lawler, and then Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree with Councilmember Barnes. We should get information from that community right there.
Okay. So, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I also would recommend talking to some residents in that area and getting a feel before we move on and make a decision.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? So my understanding is, we can put this back on the agenda, just to kind of, we'll work through it so we can do to kind of get a pulse, if maybe it's like a letter or something like that. Yeah. Is there any further discussion from council? Did you? Councilmember Spicer.
No, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to say, at this rate, summer will be over before we even get a temporary, so whatever. That was just my comment.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't think the residents would be opposed to the temporary. We've had this discussion a couple times, and I've not heard anyone come and say that they were against it, so just, I would support the temporary. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Lawler.
I just want to say to Councilmember Reed, if you need help getting information out, I'm more than welcome to help you do a survey or something like that to help pass it out.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll just make some citizen contact, and this will probably come before us again to approve that. Item E, election discussion. Councilmember Barnes.
Yes, I'm coming with this election discussion out of the same spirit that this is Shabazz had did for her nephew and dad. When I looked at that, it was profound to me. My daddy was in a prison 90% of my life, but I'm still riding with him, and some of the things that I'm seeing here are in my heart. This came up through a situation where I was out on the front steps of City Hall, and I got a phone call, and there was another city council person with me, and I just happened to push the speakerphone and called out this person's name, and we moved forward. My position is that I felt that the Mayor Garrett Brown's conduct was unbecoming of the office of the city of the Mayor of Albion. I first thought about the ethics, the right and wrong of what he reportedly or allegedly did. I was not there. I don't know if it happened or not. Then I was looking into the morals of this, if it possibly happened, into the...
Point of order, Mayor.
Go ahead. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Barnes, I respect...
You're supposed to address you. What?
Mayor, I respect Councilmember Barnes' position, or whatever he's trying to address, but it is I'm suggesting that he do this, you and him have a conversation, because public comments disparaging the mayor are totally out of line, and that's in Robert's Rules of Order. You should not personally name or attack any council person. And that's what I'm hearing come out of Councilmember Barnes' mouth right now.
Okay. So Robert's rules, one second. For ruling, breaches of order by members in a meeting, calling a member to order. Sorry about that. If the offense is more serious, in the case above, as when a member repeatedly questions the motives of another member, whom he mentions by name or persists in speaking on completely irrelevant topics in debate, says the chair will normally should warn the member, but with or without such a warning, the chair or any other member can call the member to order. If the chair does this, the member is out of order and will be seated. Further along, it says, if the chair finds this point of order well taken, which I do, he declares the offender in that case out of order and directs him to be seated. We're sitting right now. If the offender had the floor, then irrespective of who originated the proceeding, the chair should clearly state the breach involved. In this case, it's a direct naming of a colleague and questioning motive involved, and put the question to the assembly, which is the council. Quote, shall the member be allowed to continue speaking? This question is undebatable. So that is a vote that we will take right now, and we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Hold up. I haven't accused you of anything.
Councilmember Barnes.
Y'all done hooked it up again.
Councilmember Barnes. Roll call vote, please.
Oh, my God.
Can you?
It's a roll call vote.
What about your legal opinion from your lawyer?
Councilmember Barnes.
You got a legal opinion, y'all ask for lawyer.
Point of order.
Okay.
And point of order on this. Y'all off the chain.
Councilmember Barnes.
Point of order.
Whoa.
Yeah, I said.
Whoa.
You see that's
Councilmember Barnes. Out of order.
I'm out of order.
You're out of
he
order.
can arrest me. Arrest me. Let's get on national
Council.
TV. Y'all off the
Councilmember
chain.
Barnes.
Point of order.
Sonia.
Point of order.
Oh, my God.
Councilmember
Go ahead.
Point of
You're out of
order.
order.
Oh, my God.
We're in a roll call.
Point of order.
Oh, my God. Point of order.
Please continue with the roll
Get
call
off
vote.
the chain. That's orchestrated. I ain't even.
Councilmember Barnes.
I move that we
You
have.
will testify to what happened. You was the one on the step.
Mr.
I'm
Barnes.
in jail. I'm going to jail. You was on the step when I got the
Council.
call. You know you did it.
Okay.
Oh my God. Well, take me to jail.
Councilmember
I
Barnes.
move that Councilmember Barnes be removed from this meeting.
Okay.
I leave on my goddamn home.
There's a motion.
Privilege.
There's
Privilege. Privilege. How about that? How about that? Hit the gavel, Gary. Privilege. Hit the gavel. Hit the gavel. You ain't gonna do me like this. Privilege. Y'all know they on that. Yeah, I did it. Privilege. Right there on that. Privilege.
We will continue with a roll call vote that we had for the point of order.
Councilmember Brown.
Councilmember Brown. We're voting on the point of order.
We're voting on whether he should be allowed to continue or not.
I think we should stop the meeting.
No, we're not. Whoa. Okay. Councilmember Lawler, Spicer. Okay, we're in the middle of a roll call vote, please. We're voting on the ruling based on Robert's rules. I think Councilmember Brown, the vote was starting with you.
So this is a vote to
rule on your point of order.
that he should not continue speaking,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So that's a yes.
Lawler.
Yes.
Spicer.
Yes.
French.
No.
Reed. Yes. No.
Okay. So,
No. And Mayor Brown.
yes. Okay. Are there any further discussions from council? I'd like to ask the council, I have a discussion thing, and then we'll come back. I'd like to ask discussion for the council to consider. We received correspondence from the attorney, and normally that correspondence is attorney-client privilege. I'd like to allow the attorney to speak on that so the public can be aware of that correspondence. Is there a motion to allow that?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say yes? Yes. Mr. Attorney Harkins, will you please share with us the memo that you drafted, or share with the public?
So I'll just summarize very briefly that the question was posed to my office, basically what the Michigan election law has to say about a particular situation about any current member of council engaging in discussions with other persons that might be running for the same office, and whether or not that conduct would violate the Michigan election law. The Michigan, the prohibited conduct contained within the Michigan election law is primarily contained in MCL 168.931. I provided the council with an abbreviated list of the prohibited conduct. 90% of the prohibited conduct strictly deals with providing consideration, or when I say consideration, I mean anything of value to another person in such a way to influence their vote, or to induce them not to vote, or to in some way threaten them to influence their vote. There are some other provisions in there about not currying people to votes, not soliciting votes within 100 feet of a polling location on election day, things of that nature. But the Act doesn't address the specifics about whether or not a current member of council can engage in discussions with a prospective member or a prospective person for election. And because it's not specifically addressed, it's therefore not prohibited by the Act, so I can't say that conduct would be a violation of law. The additional question was posed to me about whether or not that would be ethical. It's not for my office to make determinations as to what may or may not be ethical. I just give you legal interpretations. Another question was posed to me along the same lines about whether or not making representation that a consensus of council supported something of that nature. I don't have enough information to determine whether or not that'd be a violation of the Open Meetings Act or the Home Rule City Act. So, and that was essentially the memo.
And I think one of the things that, and I'll probably bring this up during future agenda items, the city currently does not have an ethics ordinance, does it?
Correct.
Okay, so that's something that we need to take care of. I know Attorney Smith provided a sample in other cities, so I think we need to implement that, because I'm surprised that hasn't been done before. Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. While what just happened is greatly unfortunate, I think and not having had any kind of conversation with Councilman Barnes, I am hopeful that his intent for bringing this to our discussion was to preface a call on the city attorney to make a ruling. And since we all received the ruling, I was hoping that this would have been tabled or removed from the agenda, because I think we all knew from our receiving the memo from our attorney that this conversation was likely to accelerate in one person's eyes, and so I'm disappointed in Councilmember Barnes's behavior. And I thank Cullen for responding in a timely way to those requests.
I would agree that I really appreciate Attorney Harkness for his burning the midnight oil and getting this to us over the weekend. I know that, and he did a good job actually. So, which you always do. So we appreciate that, and but we want to make sure, continuing at least, as long as this council is seated, that we're going to respect each other, and that certain behavior is not going to be tolerated. So we want to adhere to Robert's rules and to the decorum of this body. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So moving forward, I hope council considers establishing a code of ethics, so we're clear on our expectations of each other on what's acceptable ethically and what's not. So I'll probably bring that up for future agenda items, but okay.
Thank you. Is any further discussion from council? Councilmember Reed.
I also hope that next time we do as Attorney Scott said, and just call the meeting to a halt until you get some kind of consent, get thing quieted down. Okay. That was his recommendation.
Okay, we will Move on to, and that ruling, I should say that the memos, because the city has, I guess, relinquished attorney-client privilege on that, if there are members of the public who want to have access to that, I'm sure that we can post that or have access to it at the clerk's office. So we'll move on to item F, discussion rental certification. Director Tracy.
John Tracy, Director of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. I believe at this point, Attorney Harkness. I believe we were going to talk about filling in.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, I had contacted Director Tracy between our last meeting and the current meeting. In my review of the ordinance, one thing that I would recommend to the council in moving forward is that there's several references in the code to residential rental structure or residential rental unit, but those terms actually aren't defined under 18403, the definition section. So I recommend that before passing the ordinance, that we add those definitions, because I think it's going to be important to know what exactly those are. And then for purposes of tonight, I think for direction to Director Tracy and myself, there's a couple things the council is going to need to address in section 18-405, subsection C. You have to determine what the rental, what the registration fee would be, and whether it's going to be for each site or parcel. Under section 406, you're going to have to determine how long the registration is going to be valid for. Section 407, again, the term of validity for how long the inspections are good for. I think really those are the only couple big things, unless I'm missing it.
And so, one question I have. So, one of the concerns that came up during the study session we had was there's a question if someone had, let's say they had one structure and it had, I don't know, 20 apartments, and then they had 3 houses. The concern was, the person had more, I guess, potentially revenue, more, I guess, units in the one structure versus the person had the 3. Can you speak to what other communities have done to address that, or is it?
Excuse me. Some of the communities just go by each unit. There are a few that go by parcel. So basically, from what's out there, they're doing a couple different ways, the cities that have rental certification. Primarily, if sounds as though a renter that has houses feels that it would be not fair across the board by them having to pay for each parcel if they have maybe 1 unit or 2 units on a parcel compared to someone that might have 20 on one parcel.
Okay.
And as far as, that's a council call.
Okay.
So we can register them either way.
Okay. To further, so I guess maybe we should set the fee and then we can kind of have that conversation. So last number that you gave us at the study session was like 25, correct? That's for the application.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at to start with, maybe to go down.
Okay.
Maybe stick right there, depending on what the cost is, the paperwork and.
Okay. And then can you speak to, can you provide us with a breakdown? So let's say we, hypothetically, we do a situation where year 1, there's application to register.
Correct.
There's an inspection. Let's say we start with inspections. The next year, there's no inspection, but there's, you register again, and then in year 3, you have that registration and inspection. So that's 3 years, let's say we set it at 25, so there's 25 each year to register. Whoever we use, or whether we do the in-house or have the another service do the actual certification, what's the potential range there? Do we have a fee schedule for what?
Right now, you're looking at, depending on who we'd use, if we use the current firm that does our inspections now, it would probably wind up being 56, because that's the next step that they'd be at. And they change that I think it's every 3 years, they increase. So it'd be the cost of inspection per unit.
Okay.
And whether it's biannual or if it's every 3 years, that's there again something that council needs to decide on what they want to do. Okay. We've also talked about if a property passes an inspection without any problems, maybe kicking out an extra year out before they have to have an inspection again too. So rather 2 years, may go to 3 years. Unless, of course, we had some kind of complaints that, meanwhile, that would change things.
Okay. Councilmember French.
Thank you. So I think that I hear two things. One, a registration.
Correct.
I would see that as being a one-time expense that would happen, that just identifies your particular property as a rental property, and that would last in perpetuity until ownership of the building changes. Then the certification part is something that happens much more frequently, every 2 years, every 3 years, whatever we decide. Because registration just allows us to identify the city. It allows us to identify where is the rental property in the city of Albion. And I certainly don't want to penalize a landowner for, throwing a fee every couple of years just to be on a list if the list doesn't change over time.
So, may I answer something? Are you willing to yield?
Absolutely.
Okay. So just to add to that, because that is a thought that was crossing my mind, is, for example, let's say we do the biannual situation. Well, when we go, because we have that list, we'll know if X number of properties registered in year one, we'll know it's time. And so then when we go to do the inspection, even if something's changed, we would know. If we got there, we could say, okay, this is not the owner, or even before then, we've made contact to know if that owner is still in place. So based on what Councilmember French said, what's the pros and cons of that?
Well, we can, we can do that. Primarily if you're looking at, depending again, how much paperwork you have in-house and how you're going to cover it from year to year. Are you going to have to pay for something to be done by the rest of the citizens that don't have rentals out of tax money? Or do you cover yourself to where you're covering your cost of running a office and department and the cost of it? And that's basically where the rental certification registrations come in with most cities.
So basically a fee for service.
We can do whatever council decides to do, but that's primarily just covering your cost in-house.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So in the let's say, I haven't heard any, and I guess did you need a determination on the frequency in terms of whether it's annual, biannual, or was that triannual? So we probably need to make that decision now. I think certainly I don't think we want to do it annually, and I think the biannual makes sense. Is there any kind of strong objection from that, from council? Councilmember Reed.
I think it would be good to meet with the rental association like they asked and kind of discuss it. Yeah. So they're well on track with what is going on as well as we know what is expected. They know what is expected of them as we know what we're
Okay.
planning.
Let me back up. I hope I'm not endangering anything here. So there was a request for the kind of Section 8 level inspection standards, and I don't
Correct.
think, my sense is that council wanted to stay with the state level of inspection, which is what we've adopted already in the ordinances. So
We
it's-
already have it adopted.
Okay. So right now, what I hear is basically a concern about making sure we're just not charging people just to turn in some forms. And there's a concern from the administration about making sure that we're not taking money out of general fund to pay for staff time to do that. I don't want to, I appreciate Councilmember French in his concern. I think it's legit about, dragging things out, but go ahead.
Well, what I might suggest then is to use the initial cost, and then if the council finds that it is costing the taxpayers for this, then go to yearly or bi-yearly registration. We can try that. It's up to you.
So I'd be willing to do that. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I also too want to thank Councilmember Barnes for adding the suggestion about the registration, and I also agree with Councilmember Reed about inviting the Landlord Association to a study session, work session, whatever you want to call it, and the request has been made by Mr. Atkins. So I want to make sure that we acknowledge that he did ask if the two could come together and meet. So
I know there's definitely been communication with the administration, and I know council had a study session that we announced. What in particular? Because we're gonna have to make a decision. That I'm trying not to draw it out. I just want to make sure. What we're doing here is more, so I don't think there's been any objection to the fact that the city's probably going to have rental certification. The question is the specifics. And go ahead, Councilmember French, and then Councilmember Brown, then Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. So during public comments, we heard some concern regarding some of the things being ambiguous. So I think it's worth a conversation with the Landlord Association to hear what those concerns are. I know there was some mentioned, but if we're going to do our due diligence, then we need to hear from those most impacted by this, maybe work through some of those things.
Councilmember French.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I see advantages to doing both. But I'm kind of thinking, maybe on what you're thinking, Mayor, is the idea is that we probably should take a vote as to make sure whether we philosophically are in favor of rental certification. And we can work out details that we then, think of it as sort of like what we're doing with council rules. We philosophically agreed that we need to change our council rules, and now we've been working to bring it to reality. When we implement an approval of a rental certification is dependent on what policies we want to create in support of that rental certification. I would like to know, for example, what are the expenses to the city besides one staff person that we've added as a code enforcement officer? What are those costs associated with bringing this together? We'd also like to know how many rental units there are in the city of Albion. And so I see the registration part, we can approve a rental registration program today. I don't think anybody, or maybe there are a few, but I think we have the votes that would say we're in favor of rental registration. And then we can come back and talk about what does a certification program look like when we have numbers, when we have concerns from rental property owners. Can we find some middle ground that we can negotiate to bring about a resolution to this?
So, and I would prefer not to have a full-fledged study session or council meeting. And because you kind of paralleled it with the council rule process. Maybe if there are interested parties in the council, maybe we could have a kind of a subcommittee just to meet and report back, because I think I'm in favor of rental certification, but if there's a subset of council that'd be willing to work and meet to do that, I would not object to that. I know this is a discussion. We can always kind of change that if necessary to make a decision. I mean, is there interest maybe in having 3 council members meet with the Landlords Association and come back to the council? Councilmember Lawler? Okay. Okay. So what I want to do, if it's okay, it takes 2/3 to do this. I'm just going to change. I'm going to ask that the discussion of this be changed into an approval of a subcommittee, and we'll allow them to meet with the Landlord Association, Director Tracy, and then report back to council, and we'll go that way. So do I have a motion to allow for action on this item?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Moved in second. Is there any discussion? We're going to roll call just because it's 2/3.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, I saw through 2 hands in the discussion. Three hands, excuse me.
I would like to be on this.
I could see too.
Okay. So I have a nomination for Councilmember Reed, Councilmember Lawler, and Councilmember Spicer to be that subcommittee and report back to council.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? So you're all appointed, and we'll work with Director Tracy to have that meeting, and hopefully we can work something out with the Landlord Association. So thank you very much. Council has approved a subgroup to deal with rental certification and report back to the body. Sale, item G, discussion sale of city-owned property. Attorney Harkness. Do you want to?
This is just like an all-city attorney.
I know.
Get used to it.
So what you have before you is the section of the Detroit Ordinance for the sale of surplus property. This was the one that council identified as pretty much having the provisions that felt most appropriate for the city. So I guess what I'm looking for from council tonight, and I can tailor an ordinance for a future council meeting, is is the council in favor of a closed bidding process as long as the parcel exceeds a certain amount? If so, what is that amount? Is the council also okay with the provision of offering certain property to adjoining owners if the provision in the Detroit version, if it's a parcel that would really only make sense to be sold to the adjoining owner, having an exemption for that, and then ultimately having kind of like, I guess what I would call an opt-out provision, such that if for whatever reason the bidding process fails or nobody submits a bid that hits a minimum bid, and again, we have to figure out what the minimum bid is, that there would be an option for council, maybe by a supermajority or whatever, to opt out and deviate from that structure. So those are the questions that I have for you tonight.
So one question I have, so I want to say Councilmember French brought it up. What protections do we have relative to if someone's like, because right now we have the property, no one's interested in it, but it is kind of prime property once development does happen. But how could the council protect, I guess, the city's best interests in terms of someone just taking it and then sitting on it for?
So I think the only way you're going to be able to do that is traditionally what's happened with the sale of city property is we have this excess property, somebody approaches us, says they want it, here's X amount of money, okay, property's done, and we deed the property to them, and then our involvement is over. If you want to put conditions on it, The only way that I can think of, the best vehicle to do that would be each parcel would have to be sold pursuant to a buy-sell agreement. And as part of that agreement, it would contain provisions that they have to develop the site, or even though if you're going to sell it to them, they're going to develop the site within X period of time or something of that nature. And in the event that they don't, the property revert, they have to deed the property back to the city or something like that. You could do it like that. I think you're going to have to pretty much do that on a case-by-case basis, because each piece of property could be different. If you get somebody that comes in and wants to buy a commercial piece of property that's vacant, obviously developing that property could take significantly longer than, say, putting a garage on a residential piece of property, or something like that. So it's possible to do that. I think you would, like I said, though, I think you'd have to address it.
So I guess my question is the window of time. So let's say we have the closed bid process. There's the highest bidder, or maybe it's only one person, and we have to determine whether they've met the minimum and all those kinds of things. But they meet that and they say, hey, I want to put a really nice manicured garden in this parcel that's adjacent to mine. The city wouldn't be open to any kind of legal liability if on that case by case, if we said, okay, as long as you do that in a year. Do you see what I'm saying?
You can put whatever conditions you want,
Okay.
but, as it relates to their development of the property,
Okay.
Or, for example, if you wanted to prohibit something from being on the property, like if you wanted to make sure that I'm just throwing this up as a weird example, make sure that they don't turn around and sell a big parcel of property to put a cell phone tower on. You could say this property will be used only for residential use, and you can put that as a deed restriction. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can control how the property is used.
Okay.
I guess what I would suggest is, like I said, I think you would deal with that specific on a case-by-case basis when it comes time for the sale of the property. I think for purposes of the ordinance, what we can build in is a provision in the ordinance that the city can attach any additional conditions on the sale of the property as is consistent with the charter, state law, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Because I think that's helpful, because once there might be a thing where once you clear the minimum bid and you're the winner of the bid, there might be something that the city has a concern about. So I think that'd be helpful to include. Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. In reviewing the Detroit policy, Cullen, I'd be interested to know how our council feels about the definition of the Community and Economic Development Department. I'm also interested in how we describe or define surplus real property. With specifically, what does surplus mean? Are we now going to go into the real estate business and every property that the city owns is now for sale? Or are we going to define essential? Because if you read the very first section of the Detroit, some existing Community and Economic Development Department has to recommend to the city council those parcels of real property which it has determined as non-essential to the city to be offered for sale, and then designate that property as surplus. We've held on to some developmental property in the hopes of attracting a developer to come and turn that into residential units, and we've been waiting for a very long time. So I think we as a council should think about what is our motive aside from a supposition that we can increase our tax base by selling off vacant property which has very little value, and then is it more important that we get property sold at whatever price, or is it to sell property to people who can afford the fair market value of that property, or some percentage of the fair market value of that property? So I'd like to have that kind of discussion as to the idea of entering into this this program to begin with.
Okay. So the last time that we talked about it, the recommendation, or what you had seen or recommended was, well, should I allow you to answer some of his questions?
Well, I guess I would say this. I mean, so obviously not everything in the Detroit ordinance is going to apply to us. I mean, this is just to give you some ideas. I mean,
Right.
The city doesn't have an economic development department. What they refer to as surplus real property, I mean, we might just identify as, I don't know, properties that have been on the city's tax rolls and that aren't being utilized by the city or held for future economic development for X period of time. I mean, literally, we could come up with any kind of system that the council deems appropriate, but so like I guess to answer your question, we wouldn't be defining economic development department. I mean, we could just designate
The manager.
you know, the manager shall, prepare a list of excess properties that aren't being utilized by the city for review by the city council, maybe on an annual basis or something like that. Something that's not overly cumbersome.
Thank you. And so I guess the next step there, or the next question, the concern is the question of the minimum amount. I think last time it was 10% was the minimum that you had suggested.
Yeah.
For the deposit, or was it for the minimum bid?
No, I thought we had talked about it being 50.
Because there was a minimum amount, and then there was a deposit amount.
We put about 10% as the deposit.
Okay.
Returnable if not accepted. Is what we discussed.
Okay.
We did not set the minimum bid.
I mean, could the minimum bid be the be that deposit?
Hypothetically.
Because some of the parcels that we discussed, like and it was an estimation, but it was fairly correct. So if you have a parcel, it's like $13,000 or $14,000 in the assessed value. Obviously, the citizens have removed that charter provision that requires us to sell it at that price. But the 10% for the if we set the deposit at 10% of, let's say, $13,000, that's still $1,300. So that's still that's a subsidy, and then after that it'd be a closed bid. So whatever someone's interested in, if you had two neighbors that were kind of dueling over a parcel between them, it'd be a closed bid. But they both have paid that 10%. What is it? I mean,
So the idea is, knowing that you've got a minimum, is to encourage bids above the minimum.
yeah. And 10% is I think that's because, there's for example, there was a resident who has, or who's interested in acquiring, I guess, an abandoned alley, right? Or alleyway that the city had. There's not going to be, the price of that property is going to be, as high as something that's like prime real estate.
Well, if you're gonna, I would say this. I mean, if your minimum bid is going to be 10%, hypothetically, the entire purchase price could be that 10% value. So you either want to have, obviously, you either want to have your deposit be that amount or less. Because it's just a deposit showing good faith towards the total purchase.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So, and you could say, hey, the minimum bid is, and you can identify for each property. We've got property worth $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. Minimum bid is $500,000, $1,500. And so you've identified the minimum bid price, and the deposit for each one shall be, say, 10% of the minimum bid. So you got to put down at least $50, $100, $150, showing that they're actually serious.
Okay.
So I'm just throwing that as an example. I mean,
So what's the easiest question for you, either of us to take?
so tell me this. First of all, I need to know, are we doing a minimum bid? I recommend that you do a minimum bid.
I think
And I think for a minimum bid, 10% of the assessed value is probably fair across the board.
I wouldn't have, is there any objection from council on that? No. Okay, I don't see any objection to that. Both the minimum bid and the 10%.
Okay, so then number 2, deposit for the property.
And that has to be lower.
I would probably say you want to go lower than your minimum bid because your minimum, like I said, your minimum bid could hypothetically be what you're paying for the property.
5%. Is that too low? Councilmember French.
Yeah, maybe I should have spoken up, but I think 10% is a good deposit.
Mm-hmm.
I think 10% is a good minimum bid, so that's 20%. So the additional 10% is the minimum bid. So your total minimum bid is your deposit plus 10%.
Sir, repeat that again.
So the minimum bid is 10%, is 20%, with the understanding that your deposit is 10%. So your deposit is 10% of the assessed value, and the minimum bid is an additional 10% of the assessed value. So it's 20%, with the understanding that your deposit is the first 10. So if I have a property worth $10,000,
So you're saying that the minimum would be 20%.
Right.
The 10%, the deposit
is 10%.
Is 10% of it, which goes towards the total value
of the minimum bid.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So the total, so a $10,000 property assessed value is $2,000 total minimum bid.
Okay. So let's say, well, you have the minimum bid, yeah. Because there is the possibility, let's say under the scenario that Councilmember French is talking about, we put it out for closed bid, and let's say one person bids, and they bid in that 10,000 assessed value, they bid, $2,001, and we open it, and it's the only bill. Do we have to sell?
Well, I think that's the idea. I mean,
pending the, if someone says, hey, I want to, if we don't want a cell phone tower there, we can do that in a purchase agreement.
Right.
Or
we can do a purchase agreement. We can put restrictions in the deed, and there's a lot of different ways.
Okay. Is there, Councilmember Spicer?
Thank you. Just a comment, Mayor. I think I can, if I was going to purchase a home for, say, $50,000, I would be required to put down an earnest deposit. And I could put down $200 or $250, anything to show good faith. So I'm just wondering about, I know we're trying to get rid of the property, and if we had a $5,000 piece of property, someone would be obligated, according to what we're doing, to put down $2,000, $1,000, I'm sorry.
No, it'd be,
Because
the deposit would be, for 5,000 would be 500.
500, and then another,
At least another 500.
on a $5,000 property. Okay, I'm just saying, it just seems like a large amount, but, I can.
Well, in that,
Because you can buy a $50,000 house and put down $500 as a deposit. It's just some things that are going through my head, and I'm just sharing.
okay.
So,
But in that scenario, I'll just use that $5,000. The person basically could make a $1,001 bid and get the property.
You can make a $1,000 bid.
Yeah. Just put it over by $1. And that's still, I guess, that's still
just something to consider.
a steal. Is there any, Councilmember Brown, strong
Thank
objection?
you, Mayor. So, excuse me, I support a 10% minimum and 5% deposit, but that's just my own.
So in the $10,000 scenario, basically, I would be, yeah.
I mean, what's the value of most of our, can you give me an average value?
It depends. They fluctuate. They're either very low or very high.
Very high.
There aren't a lot in the middle.
What's
They're
high?
high, I think we have several that are worth in the tens of thousands,
Yeah.
15, 16, 14,
Yeah.
$1,000. Then you got some that are worth like 1,000.
Yeah. So in the scenario, so we can move forward here.
Yes.
So Councilmember
Yes.
French has suggested the 10 and then the other 10, so maybe 20 right there. So in the $10,000 assessed value, you basically have, 1,000 for the deposit, 2,000 for the minimum bid, and then what Councilmember Brown would say is in that same scenario you'd have 500 for the deposit and 1,000 for the minimum bid. But I think the key thing for me is that we still have the power to say you need to develop, you basically need to keep your word on what you're telling us with the property. Correct? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, because of that, either way, I'm not really obliged to kind of pick either one. I just, as long as at the end, the council can make sure that the purchaser is going to use the property and what they've told us they're going to use it for. Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Spicer made comment that our goal is to get rid of city-owned property, and that spoke to my comment earlier about, is it our goal to get rid of? I mean, in other words, how much taxes are we expected to gain by the sale at 10% assessed value? How much do we expect to gain from selling this property? Because I think that, in fact, I think city councils in the past have valued those properties in the hopes of external development rather than sort of piecemeal parsing out to local residents or what have you. So I again would like to ask the council what the view is as to what is the motive for selling these properties. And then the follow-up question would be, what's the assessed value of a property that it's set at sale price? Because when I buy a house, my assessed value is established on the purchase price. And so if we're now taking a $14,000 piece of property and selling it for $1,400, are we now saying that the value of that property is now $1,400? Or is it $14,000? And so that's, and so from a taxable income coming in, then it's peanuts. So,
Based on the sale, yeah.
so I think that, I mean, again, it's we're trying to do a cost-benefit analysis on why we're selling these properties. And what we've heard so far is that council thinks that we can increase our tax base by selling off city property. We can save money from lawn mowing those properties. So I just would like to be able to make a decision based on dollars.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think I think the first point, I think actually what you were saying earlier about that first kind of paragraph, I think if we have that process where it's kind of recommended to us, I would think that the manager is going to recognize, for example, that area, the urban renewal area. We might want to keep those parcels, adjacent parcels, together, so they might not even be recommended for sale. So I think that's a protection against selling away property that could actually be developed if it was kept together. So I think that addresses that concern. The other concern you have about the numbers, I think that's fair. And so just in interest of time, we might want to, I know our finance director's not here, get that information, because you're right, we need to know that. I know we do spend money on mowing, but Attorney Harkness.
I guess what I'll say is, what I'd like to do is put together, and it won't be at the next council meeting, but in the near future, a draft with, and I'll use the 10 and 5 number, and then you can discuss this further at that time. But,
okay.
So
makes sense.
The 10 and 5, the 10%.
I think you said 5 and then 10, didn't you?
Well, that, okay, 10 and 5 is, 10% assessed value, 5% deposit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, the other question is, all right, is the council okay with offering the parcels that are only of use to the adjoining owner, that same provision, or similar provision to what Detroit has?
Yeah, yes. If there's any, we shouldn't, I mean, is there any objection to that?
No objection.
Okay, there's no objection.
Okay. I think that's all I need. I'll put together a draft and have something for you.
And with the understanding that we'll have some information from the finance director about what the implications are in terms of.
Probably more of an assessing question than finance, but.
Okay, you're right. Has she left? Yeah. Retired. Oh, they already started. Okay. So that'll be the first test of our new assessing vendor. Okay, so we've basically provided information to the attorney to begin drafting that, and we'll fill in some of the kind of data and numbers at a future time. Item H, request approval, boards and commissions reappointment, Marvin Ittner reappointment, the Public Safety Pension Board, and this will expire in December 31st, 2021. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Is there a second? Okay. This is, the Public Safety Pension Board is a 5-member board. The city treasurer serves on it or serves ex officio on it. There are 2 spots there for current, well, our fire and police departments are combined, but there's usually one for public firefighter and then a police officer. So those seats are currently filled. The council approved an appointment for the 2 remaining open ones at our previous meeting. So this is the last remaining vacancy. Marvin Ittner has served on the board for a long time. He's retired, but his expertise is in banking. I was able to talk to him, had a conversation, and like we heard from the during the audit, our public safety pension exceeds 100% funded. So that's very good, especially in Michigan. So I'd ask the council support his reappointment. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Discussion of street millage, Councilmember French.
In the interest of time, I request that we move this, table this for now. We can bring it up since we will miss a deadline for doing anything this November, because I believe getting things on the ballot is next week. So in the interest of time, I would just ask that we table this until a council meeting when there is a limited agenda, and we can have the conversation. We're not in any danger of running out of our millage in the short term.
So I'll just have a motion to kind of postpone that.
The first meeting in August,
Okay.
if the agenda is not too heavy.
Okay. So
And I will leave that at your discretion, Mayor.
we can put it on there. Yeah. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, moving support. Is there any discussion to postpone this into our first meeting in August? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to do a voice vote. As all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Opposed? Okay. That was obviously 2/3, and so we pushed that to our first meeting in August. Item J, I'd probably also ask that well, this is discussion, but that's tied into what we're already talking about, so I think we should probably postpone that as well. Councilmember Spicer.
Just a clarification, Mayor. We have an offer in front of us, or acceptance. And that it should be tabled? We have on the table an acceptance, I guess.
Well, it's a discussion.
So what I was going to say to
Go
council
ahead.
is the letter says that it's an acceptance, but it's actually a counteroffer because what the council had proposed was selling each of the parcels for $1 plus closing costs and recording fees. And what this individual has proposed is adding a term that it be allowed to close at separate times within a 6-month period. when you add a term to an offer, it's a rejection of the offer, and it becomes a counteroffer. So what you have in front of you is a counteroffer to the previous offer that the council made. So you can choose to accept the counteroffer, or you can, as somebody had suggested, table it until you resolve the sale of excess property ordinance issue.
Councilor Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. Didn't we already decide to do something with this? Thought we had a discussion about that.
Yeah, we had a discussion, but we actually postponed it for the purposes of kind of setting up a procedure or a policy about it in general, because there was concern about balancing the value of the property with what it would be used for, and so it might be best just to hold off until we work out the policy about the sale. Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that we had several conversations with regard to this property, and this property owner is clearly interested, as we have went back and forth. So even though there's a counter because he has added a condition of the 6 months, I think that I could accept this offer as a counter as written.
Okay. So what, we have it as a discussion. I don't have any further comment. We can probably just have a future agenda item and put it back on the agenda and do that. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So you're suggesting we put it on our next agenda as an action item to accept this counter offer, or?
Well, it'll be there for a vote.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay.
Motion to table. Can you explain that? You said for a vote?
So the item is on the agenda for discussion, so council's not really making a decision. This would be a time, discussion is generally a time if we kind of ask questions. The attorney's kind of provided some information to let us know that the terms of the offer have been adjusted. So it's not the same offer that was before us before, but because we've told the public in our agenda that there's going to be a discussion, we can always change that, but I think it's probably best just to put on the next agenda and then vote on it. So we really haven't made a decision. We the council unanimously could say, we're not interested, and so then it probably wouldn't even come back to a vote. So what we can do is put on the next agenda and vote on it. Okay. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we will move on to request K, approval of demolition bid for 608 Austin Avenue. Is Director Tracy. Yes. Oh.
In your packet, you'll undoubtedly find the bids that came in. The bid that we have for doing 608 Austin Avenue is $16,800, which is higher than what we would initially have thought would be, but due to the condition of the property and only being able to get into basically a little over a third of the building to remove hazardous materials, it bumps the overall demolition up quite a bit, because the parts that are unable to get into to remove materials will have to go to another more costly landfill site than before. So
if I have one question. So if I recall, there was 18,000 in solid waste.
18,000 is what we originally talked about.
Okay. And you're saying it's going up to 16.
It's up to 16,800, and as I said before, that 18,000, it could be lower, or it could be on, or you could be tacking another 10 grand onto it.
And if we get in there and there's something
Well, right now, what that cost is figuring is for demolition of the portions that we cannot take the hazardous materials out of. Okay, plus that area after that, those materials have been removed from the areas that they can get into.
Okay.
So overall, the total cost of this project is going to be $24,399. So it gives you an idea. What you may estimate does not always mean what it's going to cost, especially with today's regulations and what you have to meet with EPA and DEQ and such.
Okay. Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. What was that figure again, John?
The total cost of this, if we go with the $16,800, by the time the project is totally done, we're looking at $24,399.75.
Wow.
That the city would pay.
Yeah. Correct. So I guess the question is, so there have been assessments done, so we're in possession of those, correct? Okay. So if, for example, we return to this for the next budget year, okay, from your experience, should we anticipate having to do that again, or can we use the same assessment if it's just a year off?
Well, what I would suggest is maybe, I know Director Mead is not here tonight, and he was not able to give me a update before he left on where we sit with the solid waste. So,
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. In all fairness, this is Councilmember Brown's agenda item.
Okay.
He is not here to discuss it or talk about it. So I am moving that we table this until our next meeting.
Postpone it to the next meeting.
Postpone it till the next meeting.
Okay. And then we'll have the information.
then we can find out exactly where we stand with.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on that motion to postpone until the next meeting? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say yes? Yes. Any opposed? Thank you. Future agenda items. All the things that we put on the next agenda. Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. A code of ethics for the council.
Ordinance, yeah.
I'm asking that we discuss how to move forward and create that, and yes.
I agree. Any further agenda items? Councilmember Lawler, Attorney Harkness.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to put on the agenda McIntosh Park, the Doggy Park, and Project Rising Tide.
Okay. Attorney Harkness, sorry.
It doesn't have to be on the next agenda because the next agenda is already sounding long, but believe it or not, it's time for the city attorney annual review again.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other future agenda items? Okay. Future agenda
I
item?
just thought of something.
Councilman French, yeah.
Timeline for the city manager search. Deadline is
Yes. So we.
the end of this month or the end of this week?
I
can't remember if it was the 20th or the 27th.
It's the 27th.
27th, okay.
So there is a meeting, I guess I can say that just a point of kind of privilege here. We have scheduled a meeting in August, can you remember?
14th.
The 14th.
Oh, that's right.
So we had that meeting scheduled.
I just couldn't remember. Thank you.
For that. Okay, seeing no future agenda items, I'll move on. He was here, so it doesn't need to be excused. We don't need to do that. Public comments. Persons addressing the city council, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum to state your name and address. And for the audience, we ask that you refrain from any response to comments, clapping, and those kinds of things according to council rules. Are there any general comments this evening from the public? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Wayne Arnold, 906 Hall Street. Ms. Reed,
I echo your sentiment. It would be a travesty to have one of those kids run out there and get hit by a car. Just the thought of it, you know, I lived on Michigan Street many years, and the part that's going to be blocked off, there's no residents there. You got two accesses to the people on the east side of Michigan Street. Just put up some barricades, block it off, because their safety is most important. We don't need to be going and act. We only got like 3 residents on that street. Why waste time to go to those 3 residents and say, well, can we block the streets off? No, we should block the streets off. Take the barriers, block the streets off, and then discuss, the permanent barriers later. I mean, it's really important. And then I applaud you for that, because it seems to me that would be the number one thought. It's just the idea of one of those kids getting hit that terrifies me. So, good job, and thank you.
Is there any further public comment, general comment this evening?
Hello, my name's John Dunklin. Why every time Mr. Barnes put his hands up, the mayor say he can't speak? Why can Precinct 6 put their hand up and every time the mayor say they can speak? Why does Precinct 1 pay taxes? Because the money does not show up in the precinct. Can we see on paper, Mr. Mayor, where our money went? Last meeting I was here, the mayor said everybody gets 3 minutes. The man that came up after me, the mayor said it doesn't matter. He gave him 6. So at this time, I think that the mayor was biased. On my phone, I have a paraplegic man that lives in my area. He'll never get out that wheelchair. It's been 375 days, no answer from the mayor on handicapped sidewalks, accessible sidewalks, or anything to do with this area. At this point in time, Mayor, for 375 days, you still not can answer a disabled man? I please ask that the mayor comment. This is for disabled people, but you can talk about parking on Maple, but you can't talk about somebody that's paraplegic that has to get around. You can't talk about this? You ought to be ashamed. "56 seconds. Mayor, would you like to comment? Will you comment? "375 days, nothing to say to disabled people? The mayor ignores disabled people? Is this what you do, Mayor? No, is this what you do? Because it's been what you've been doing for 375 days. In the last 30 seconds, I'll say for you.
Is there any further public comment this evening?
Good evening, everyone. Al Smith, 1209 Adams Street. I'm here tonight representing a group of the Albion Community Leadership Council, and we just want to be sure that you know to vote yes on August 7th for the recreation millage. This is what's going to keep our children in the recreation division. It's going to help keep our seniors in the Forks Senior Center, and it's something that we're going to have to keep our recreation going in Albion. I do have a few flyers I will just leave here for anyone who would like to have them. But please remember, this is on August 7th, not in November when the regular elections are. So please come out and vote yes. And I would also like to ask if the council would take some time out of their busy schedules to let their constituents know where they stand on this matter. Will you approve it? Will you disapprove it? And why? Don't do it now, but sometime during the next couple of weeks, maybe write a letter to the editor. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Is there any further public comment? Sir.
My name is James Hall. I reside at 113 East Cass, Apartment B. I came to a lot of the council meetings prior, but somehow I got away from them. And so I went down there Sunday and looked at the agenda in front of City Hall. And some of these things caught my eye, and one of them was a discussion of Irwin Ave. Well, I guess it wasn't Irwin Ave, I shouldn't say that. It was about the millage for the streets. And then the other one was at the sale of at 702, 4, 6, and 8 West Erie Street. Well, them been put back. Okay, me as a citizen, how do I know if I have to come to every council meeting and you guys can say, well, we're just going to take and talk at another time with these agenda items? So we can keep coming back and coming back and coming back and never get a true agenda thing. I realize that. But sometimes, some of these things, like with the millage, I guess you're going to push it on to the next person. Okay, about the urban renewal property down there on West Cass Street, that thing has been there for 50 years, and nothing has been developed in that area at all. And I know it's a big piece of property, but you can't wait for that big guy to come along and purchase this. It hasn't been that long ago, probably 20 years ago, people tried to divide that up, and the city council said no, because we're going to take and make it one big sale there, and we're still making for that one big sale. And these properties on Erie Street, I'm trying to run it through my mind, I ain't got very much time, where these properties are at. Are them properties on the north side between Albion Street and Gale Street? Okay, a developer was in there not that long ago and put a couple houses in there, and he thought at the time it wasn't feasible for him to put those type of houses in Albion because it wasn't a sell item. So I don't know what the person is wants to purchase this land. I guess we as a public don't get that information at a council meeting. I mean, is it a developer or who is it? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the city manager report.
Just one item. Just wanted to update everybody on the progress in the water tower. I was advised the end of last week by Jim Lennerson, the Director of Public Services, that the inside of the water tower actually has been painted already, and it takes about a week for that paint to cure, and then the water tower would be built back up and it should be back in service. So I'm expecting either by the end of this week or early next week for the water tower to be back in service.
Okay. Wow. Councilmember French.
Can I have a follow-up question to that?
Yes.
When's the outside of the tower going to be done?
They're just about done with that as well.
I see no lettering.
Huh?
I see no lettering.
Well, the lettering's not done, but.
And hopefully everyone's okay with the color scheme. Is that?
We approved it.
Okay.
So we are.
Yeah. So we just had a manager report. We're at mayor and council member comments. Are there any, I have a few, but if there are any comments from council, Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to announce that there will be a 3-on-3 tournament fundraiser for Double Vision Center, August 11th at 3 p.m. There'll be food, bounce houses, music, and other activity on that day. So we ask that you come out and support it. And I want to make a comment about this weekend. I went out and did a survey, which this weekend coming up, I'll finish my survey about what we would like to see in the Union Steel property if it happens to get torn down in 2019. So my surveys, I did one portion of my area this past weekend, and I'll be doing the other portion of my precinct this coming weekend. And I really do need your support at getting those surveys back to me. It's very important for us because this is a big and exciting moment for us if we happen to get chosen to get this property down. So I'm just asking that if I have already sent a survey out to your house, could you please this Sunday put it back out on your clothespin that I have provided for you. It can be anywhere except inside your mailbox, because I will be charged for it if it's inside your mailbox. So please use the clothespin that I provided, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Is there any further comments? Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for both the general public and the audience present. After considerable consideration of what I'm doing as my job and as my service to the city approaches its 8th year, I have decided that I will not run for re-election of the 6th precinct. It's been a challenging 8 years. I've got lots of jobs. I have a four-sided business card. And for the sake of my family and for my own mental health and the fact that my paying job takes on increasing amounts of time, I'm stepping down effective the end of my term. I will say that Mr. Shane Williamson has pulled papers to run for the 6th precinct. There may be others out there. I've not identified or been told of any others, but in any case, Mr. Shane Williamson will be running for election of 6th precinct, and I thank everyone for respecting my decision.
Thank you, Councilmember French, for your service, and we'll do appropriate recognition at that time. Is there any further comment from council? Okay, so I have a couple of, let me be very quick here just for clarity. There were concerns raised about public comment and why we do not respond. We've had several trainings with, I guess, an expert in municipal law, and public comment is the time for the public to speak. It's not for us to respond to answers. That's for you to have uninterrupted time to speak whatever your concern is. And our time is right now. So when there are requests for us to respond, we don't respond because that's a time that's set aside for public comment, uninterrupted. Regarding the concerns in 1st Precinct, those have been heard. I offered after the last council meeting to meet with the resident. The resident didn't stick around. Regarding why council members may or not be acknowledged, that has to do with just the order. If a council member speaks once, they can't speak again until someone else who wants to speak is allowed to speak. When citizens pay taxes, the idea of tax is that we put our money, we pull it together, and we deal with issues in the city that are most pressing. So that's part of the compromise in living in a city is we take taxes and we spread it to do projects. I will commend the council. At several meetings ago, we actually voted and gave our intent that we would do street repair work in Precinct 1. The usual millage amount is, I want to say $240,000 off the top of my head. And that will be used in 2020 the last year of the street millage to do whatever work can be done on First, Second, and Third Street. And that would potentially include handicap accessible sidewalk access. So these are discussions that have been had, and so those are being misrepresented. I want to thank Al Smith for his work. I sit on DDA, he sits on DDA, for the cruise in with the cars during the summer. I was out of town on a family reunion, but we appreciate the hard work, especially with the street being closed. So hopefully next year we can help you and get more community volunteers to help with the car show. There was a concern about agenda items. I know that you can be put on a list to receive the agendas. I'm assuming you might be on that. We try to address the issues that we've planned, but sometimes new information or things come up, so we have to push that. But we try not to postpone issues because we know people do come for a particular issue. If there are people in the public who want to have copies of the agenda, you can contact the city clerk and you can be put on the email list to receive agenda and notices about when we meet. And then two last things. The council asked the voters to approve a recreation millage. But I'm going to have Attorney Harkness explain that there are, even though the council approves it and asks the public to vote on it, the state imposes limits on what we can do as elected officials when it comes to the issue. So when we ask the public for more money, we're restricted in how we can advocate for that. So there's a reason. I've received a couple questions about why I haven't gone out and stated support or non-support of the millage, but we're limited as elected officials to what we can say when it comes to our own millages. So I'm going to let the attorney explain that.
So just briefly, I mean, essentially what the council can do is provide information about the millage in the sense of how much the mills are, what that equates to in terms of what it's going to cost each person, how much revenue it's going to generate for the particular millage, and what the money is going to be used for. The council cannot advocate for or against the millage itself. They can only provide information about the millage.
Yeah, so that's why I haven't taken a public stance on that. And then also, because there's been kind of, there were some concerns about people couldn't hear you on the audio when we had our last meeting regarding the yard sign thing and the Reed case. So can you loudly and very deliberately repeat why our ordinance regarding political campaign signs is essentially not in effect?
So, speak up. Is this on? Yeah. I want to say it was, I'll just refer to it as the Gilbert case. There was a, I want to say 2016 United States, maybe it's 2015, United States Supreme Court case that basically said that local municipalities cannot regulate signs based on content. It can only be, they can only be regulated on content neutral things such as size, shape, number, lighting, things like that. So that's why the portion of our sign ordinance that says that political signs cannot be out for a certain number of days is now essentially void, because we can't regulate those signs just because they're political signs. Now, what may end up happening in the future is the city may have an ordinance regarding temporary signs, which will apply to all temporary signs, including political signs, but at this point, there is no regulation on that. The placement of political signs at this point is only regulated by the state.
And so just to, I'm just going to ask you for clarification here. So when you say content, what you basically mean, for example, would be if there was a local religious organization that had a sign that said, hey, we're having a summer camp, and you had a political sign over here that says vote for somebody. And if the ordinance said for the political sign, you have 90-day window, but for the religious summer camp, you have a 30-day window, that's unconstitutional, because the ordinance was favoring one type of content, which is like in this example, like a religious content, over a political content. Right. So what the court has done is basically leveled the regulations.
Regulations are content neutral.
Yes. And then the last thing I'll say as a comment, and I thank council for their patience. Robert's Rules does allow the chair of a meeting to waive speaking times if it's an important subject, or if in the case that was brought up too, the gentleman who spoke after him was actually our sitting county commissioner. And so that's a kind of an intergovernmental concern. So we want to give him due deference and respect because he's making time to be here, and we appreciate that. So if I see no further comment from council, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned. He didn't want to speak.
Oh my gosh. As a speaker like me, you can speak and not be part of the